Intense fighting has been reported in eastern Ukraine, a day after a peace deal was reached in Minsk. The fiercest battles were over control of the town of Debaltseve, a strategic town in between rebel-held areas. Shelling was reported in Donetsk and Luhansk, rebel bastions near the front line where the pro-Russian rebels face government forces. The ceasefire agreed in the Belarusian capital is to begin in eastern Ukraine after midnight, 2200 hours o'clock GMT, on Saturday. The EU has warned Russia of additional sanctions if the deal is not respected. BBC journalists in Donetsk heard new shelling on Friday morning, though they said it sounded less intense than in recent days. Luhansk also came under bombardment overnight, with Russian TV reporting some of the heaviest fighting in months. But Ukraine's army said the most ferocious fighting centered on Debaltseve, a railway junction where pro-Russian rebels have encircled government troops and are reportedly bombarding them in a last-ditch effort to win the town. The Ukrainian military says 8 personnel have died in the past day, while rebels say 7 civilians have been killed. 2 people were also killed on Friday morning when rebels shelled a cafe in Chastya, near Luhansk, said the head of the Kiev-controlled regional administration. So this is how a comprehensive ceasefire is prepared for, said Hennady Moskal in a statement. He was echoing wider doubts about the peace deal agreed following marathon negotiations between Russia, Ukraine, Germany, and France. Glimmer of hope. Pro-Russian rebels have signed the agreement, which also includes weapon withdrawals and prisoner exchanges, but key issues remain to be settled. A new round of EU asset freezes and travel bans against 19 Ukrainian separatists and Russians, in response to deadly fighting in the city of Mariupol in January, will come into effect on Monday regardless of the latest deal. But German Chancellor Angela Merkel says wider measures could be implemented if the ceasefire is not upheld. She has called the deal a glimmer of hope, adding, "It is very important that words are followed by actions." Russia has reaffirmed it is playing no direct role in the conflict, with Kremlin spokesman Dmitry Peskov insisting it is only a guarantor. It is not a party that has to take action in this matter. We simply cannot do that physically, because Russia is not a participant in this conflict, he said. The latest agreement includes ceasefire to begin at 12:01 local time on February 15, 22:01 GMT February 14. Heavy weapons to be withdrawn, beginning on February 16 and completed in 2 weeks, beyond a buffer zone behind the current front line for Ukrainian forces and behind the September front line for separatist forces. All prisoners to be released, amnesty for those involved in fighting. Withdrawal of all foreign troops and weapons from Ukrainian territory. Disarmament of all illegal groups. Ukraine to allow resumption of normal life in rebel areas, by lifting restrictions. Constitutional reform to enable decentralization for rebel regions by the end of 2015. Ukraine to control border with Russia if conditions met by the end of 2015. Ukrainian President Petro Poroshenko says the rival military commanders will hold direct talks, including on the withdrawal of heavy armor to create a buffer zone. He warned that implementation of the agreement, reached by leaders in the Belarusian capital Minsk, would be difficult. The fate of Debaltseve will also be a sticking point. Further talks are to be held on self-rule in parts of Donetsk and Luhansk separatist regions. The truce is to be monitored by the Organization for Security and Cooperation in Europe, OSCE, but with only 412 international monitors in Ukraine, including 226 in the Donetsk and Luhansk regions, some analysts have expressed doubt that they are there in adequate numbers to do the job. Few in Donetsk expect a sudden and complete end to war, says the BBC's James Reynolds, who is there. Ukraine and the West accuse Russia of supplying weapons and personnel to the rebels, but Russia denies this. More than 5,400 people have been killed since the conflict began. There has been a dramatic rise in casualties in recent days, with 263 civilians killed in populated areas between January 31 and February 5.